a second presentation that will be given by Timothy D. Robertson from the World Bank, which is on approaches and tools for domestication of CSA at scale. So I see the word scale here. I like it very much. So let me invite Manyeu for the first presentation, to be followed by Timothy's presentation.
Thank you so much, Mark. If we could get the slides loaded. I have a few slides. I'm not going to have a long presentation. I have a few slides just to highlight some of the areas within CAADP Kampala that are clearly, I must say, even they are clearly motivated by the CSA principles that many of us have been a part of developing over many years as a part of solving the key challenges that we face in our agri-food system, particularly in a worsening climate crisis, as the director said. Many of these approaches, some of the tools have been trialed in many parts of our continent and other parts of the world as well, where they've shown great potential. I'll go very quickly through the objective areas of CAADP Kampala with a view to really just highlighting, the connection between, what is in the ambition that has been, expressed in CAADP Kampala and how it really falls back on CSA as a pathway to reaching the targets that have been agreed by our heads of states. As you can see, these are the 6 strategic objective areas of CAADP Kampala. I will spend a bit more time on the first strategic objective on intensifying sustainable food production, and on the third one as well, which speaks to ensuring food and nutrition security, and number 5, which focuses on building resilient agri-food systems. Essentially, these are the primary areas where we see a lot of the role of CSA being central to the delivery of these 3 strategic objective areas under CAADP Kampala. But I must say that you will also see connections in the other strategic objective areas, but I'm really just highlighting where there's the prominent role for CSA in delivering the ambition that has been expressed in these 3 strategic objective areas. And if you look through the list of intervention areas that have been proposed under each of these 3 strategic objective areas, you will see that a lot of them are motivated or inspired by the principles, some of the practices, some of the technologies that are, essentially a part of, the broad spectrum of climate-smart agriculture, tools and approaches. So I will go into the first strategic objective areas. I'm really highlighting some of the intervention areas that are clearly outlined in the first strategic objective areas that align with CAADP Kampala. Maybe I should move to this screen so that I can see clearly. From here, I don't quite see very well. Anyway, so you will see that there are clear intervention areas that are essentially motivated by a climate-smart agriculture approach to transforming our agri-food system. So you will see there the first key intervention area essentially talks about conservation agriculture, which is one of the the approaches, the practices that are a part of as well, that focuses on ensuring food and nutrition security. Also highlights some of the key things that are important for climate-smart agriculture, and you will see that there's huge capacity within, CSA approaches for delivering on this, including increasing sustainable agriculture practices to enhance productivity. Productivity is one key leg of climate-smart agriculture approaches, so that definitely aligns with that. Biodiversity as well, aligning as well with a diversified production system that is typical And that is, actually iconic about climate-smart agriculture practices that, that we have been a part of. And the focus on nutrient-dense crops and integration of legumes into cropping systems, that is a huge part of dealing with issues of nutrition, issues of food security on the continent. So the targets as well that align with that specific strategic objective areas, these are essentially also areas that climate-smart agriculture would really deliver on, including on reducing standing because of the emphasis on diversification of production system, issues of essentially ensuring that the population has access to healthy diet. So the connection with climate-smart agriculture and the potential for such approaches to really contribute to this strategic objective area is very clear. I will go to the last one, which essentially is most directly aligned with climate-smart agriculture because of the focus on building resilient agri-food systems that can withstand shocks and stresses. And above all shocks, I think I can safely say for our continent, climate is the biggest shock that our agri-food systems face on the continent. And you will see that strategic objective number 5 went into some detail essentially on the climate element. It recognizes that there is a suite of shocks and stresses that are impacting our food systems, but it went into some detail about addressing the climate shock for good reasons, because of the magnitude of its impact on our food system. And you will see interventions that have been proposed in these specific objective areas also align with interventions that are really rooted on climate-smart agriculture, including building and investing in human capacities, knowledge systems, early warning systems, precision agriculture technologies, including the use of geospatial tools and techniques, the adoption of climate-resilient, low-emission agriculture, because the third pillar of climate-smart agriculture also really stresses the low-emission agriculture, which is a big part of what we need to deliver as a continent, as well as our contribution to the global ambition on reducing emissions and dealing with the challenge of climate-smart agriculture. The intervention areas around risk transfer, social protection mechanisms, that are a big part of how you deal with shocks such as climate change. Big ones like your droughts, your floods, would require such tools to ensure that populations, farmers can bounce back in case of such big shocks. So the targets are very clear as well within this strategic objective area. 30% of agricultural land under sustainable management by 2035, at least 40% of households protected from these shocks by 2035. So these are clearly the targets, the areas where climate-smart agriculture needs to contribute as part of driving CAADP Kampala, delivery. So it is clearly an approach that we feel is ready to be unleashed on, really driving implementation of CAADP Kampala with speed, with the agency that is required. And really, as the director said earlier, banking on proven solutions that are ready to be taken to scale, and obviously recognizing the agency also with dealing with the challenge of scaling, particularly in small order systems, which face particular bottlenecks in various areas, as already outlined. So I will stop. I'll stop at this point. I think this was really just to highlight some of the areas that connect with CAADP Kampala and where the relevance of climate-smart agriculture really, comes to the top. But not to say these are the only areas. This is really just examples that I've highlighted. And if you look closely, you will see the strategy and action plan also going into some detail in the other specific areas, of interventions across, almost the full suite of strategic objective areas that are part of CAADP Kampala. Let me stop here. Thank you, moderator, for the time. But I'll be happy to go into any further details later on. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Manyeu, for that presentation. So, as we heard, at least 3 out of the 6 strategic objectives under CAADP Kampala have very clear linkages with climate smart agriculture. As you know, we have, and we also have heard it over the past few days, we have guidelines for domesticating the CAADP strategy and action plan developed. And so countries will be busy translating these objectives into actionable plans at that level. Now, in doing so, it's important for these countries to have the tools and the right approaches for this domestication process that will be undertaking in order to deliver on the targets in the strategy and action plan. So we have heard what Manyeu has shared, the clear relevance of CSA. Now let us listen to Timothy Robertson on the approaches and tools for domestication of CSA at scale. Timothy, please.
I'm not going to give you a PowerPoint presentation. I think we've had enough. But I will just walk you through an approach which we are, in partnership with our colleagues in IGAD, CADESA, and ADFNS are working on. So I think the previous presentation really highlighted, I think, one of the key challenges that we face, which is, I think we've got a lot of analysis around the challenges of climate change and the response of climate smart agriculture. In the World Bank, we probably have 3 or 4 reports in every country which highlight provide the analysis for the challenges that countries are facing. And that analysis allows us to understand the environmental impact, the social impact, the economic impact, all of which is really very useful evidence for highlighting the risk. But the missing element is, okay, what are you then going to do about mitigating that risk? How are you going to finance? Where are you going to finance investment in climate smart agriculture in order to both reduce the risk of climate smart agriculture, but also attract financing from funds like the Green Investment Fund? So the World Bank had a global process and it produced a flagship report. And out of that flagship report, we developed something called the Food System Climate Action Plan, FSCAP for short. And this FSCAP is being piloted now in 6 countries. The teams are just about to go to these 6 countries: Ethiopia, Kenya, Comoros, Tanzania, Malawi, and Zambia. These are the 6 countries. And the objective of the FSCAP is to identify investment areas. That's its value proposition. Using all of the analysis which has taken place within the country, building consensus with stakeholders, identifying those areas where analytical work has been completed. So let's take the example of Tanzania. There's been a lot of work and a lot of analysis on the risks of climate smart agriculture. The bank, the UN, other agencies. So the FSCAP process will bring in all of that analysis and then use that analysis to identify where bankable investments exist. And the objective of the FSCAP is to provide a report that then identifies investments that can be made now because they have all the analysis, identify those investments where there may be just a minor additional pieces of work that are required, investments where there's substantive areas of investment required. So let me try to break that down a bit. You can imagine that in somewhere like Tanzania, they will come up with a series of investments, maybe related to climate resilient seeds. And the question would be, okay, how do we then, what is the lever, where are the levers within Tanzanian seed markets, seed sector, that will allow expansion of climate resilient seeds? Is it enabling the private sector to have a more expansive role in Tanzania? If that is the case, what are the regulations that need to be addressed in order to accelerate expansion of private investment into Tanzanian seed sector? So those are the very specific, very clearly defined outcomes that we're hoping will be developed from the climate smart the food system climate action plans. We're also recognizing that in some areas there would need to be further analysis. So again, let me use the example of Tanzania as a framework. The development of climate smart technologies requires a research institutions that have both the capability, the resources, the infrastructure, the personnel to be able to respond to changing climate issues in challenges in Tanzania. So using the public expenditure review process, we can look at the degree to which Tanzanian research institutions have been financed over the past decade. We can look at what outputs they've been able to produce, and we can assess whether there's been sufficient investment in infrastructure, for example. And if there hasn't been an enabling environment for Tanzania to be able to invest in climate smart research, then the food system, the FSCAP process will say, okay, if you want to be innovative, you need to invest consistently and predictably into the public sector research institutes. And in fact, so the public expenditure review is one piece of analysis that feeds into identifying the investable projects. In other areas, let's say in Zambia, the FSCAP process could be used to identify those areas of Zambia which may be open to carbon investment. And there are examples of projects in Zambia that have carbon investment. So the question for the FSCAP process will be there, how do we scale up those types of investments? So it's both about how maximizing the use of public money in the example related to research. It's about identifying those areas where private investments can be accelerated. And it's about identifying those areas where there is a clear possibility of attracting green climate fund investment. So the value proposition of the FSCAP process is that it will look primarily at the national agricultural investment plans as its primary area of focus. It's not yet another tool to identify risks. It's really looking at, okay, this is the NIPE. How is the NIPE responding to climate smart challenges? How can public money be reallocated, reinvested? And we can use investments to support that reallocation of resources. Is the NIPE sufficiently positioned to attract private money? If not, make recommendations on investable ways of doing that. And is the NIPE sufficiently positioned to maximize the opportunities of climate investment. The one thing that, the one fact that comes through that kind of drove this process is that agriculture is a major contributor to climate change, but it's the least effective in attracting climate-related investment. So we need to flip that formula over, and we're really hoping that the FSCAP process will be able to do that. So as I say, the process, we're piloting the FSCAP process in these 6 countries. Over the next 12 months, we'll be having various events, trying to draw people like yourselves into those events so that we can explore how effective the FSCAP has been. We're really hoping that if it is an effective tool, that it can be part of the package that ALDA and NEPAD are pulling together to help countries align national agriculture investment plans to ensure that they deliver on the targets of Kampala, but also going beyond that and really helping to make sure that we're maximizing the use of public money, attracting private investment, and then attracting new green investment into the sector. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Timothy, for that. So, colleagues, we've heard about the Food Systems Climate Action Plan, FSCAP, which is an important tool or approach that will help to make the NIBES or NAFSIPs implementable. So the NIBES becomes the reference point for the use of this tool, which will help to identify bankable investment opportunities based on analytical work which would have been conducted. Thank you very much, Timothy, for that. Let me open it now for any brief comments or questions to either Manuel or Timothy before we go to the panel session. So I see a hand there. Yes, let's have one here. Second, Prof. Third and fourth. Yeah, the mic is coming.
Portfolio management, and then also linking that to scaling. And I for example, I'm trying to support the Ethiopian Institute of Agriculture to kind of adopt that kind of framework in its institute. The importance of that is we can now profile, for example, CSA innovations in Ethiopia if we systematically do it together with the institute, and then we can link that to scaling. So maybe these are the kind of things that CGIAR could provide support in the initiative that you're having. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for that. Colleagues, let us stick to one question or comment per person, and please go straight to the comment or question. So the next one is Prof. Yes.
Well, thank you. Actually, the first is a comment, because it seems like that CSA is only a concern of agriculture. It seems like that, but we have to consider that CSA is both the concern of climate change specialists and agricultural sector specialists. Also, at the continental level, we don't need only to concentrate on CAADP. CAADP is our framework, but at the same time, we have the climate change strategy and action plan of the African Union Commission, and CSA is a point of convergence. Therefore, we have to consider these two so that we actually get to the what we call just transition. Therefore, we have to bring these professionals together so that we work together, because it is a concern of the two sectors and the two continental strategic frameworks. That's one. If you allow me, just short question for Timothy. Very short question. Well, I was very much enthusiastic to read the 2015 African Agribusiness Climate Change Agribusiness Plan, if I'm correct, for Timothy from the World Bank, which clearly outlined that it will mobilize some $5 billion US dollars by 2020 for implementation of climate smart agriculture. Now I am hearing about the new initiative which actually tries to mobilize another financing source or so. Now, is there any impact analysis of that $5 billion projection of investment on CSA by 2020, or should we consider it just as history and keep quiet? Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And then please, one quick question.
Good morning, my name is Ishete Dejen, I'm working for IGAD. My question is for both Timothy and Mwanyo. In IGAD, we have very good early warning system when it comes to climate smart. The big challenge, climate smart agriculture technologies are there. Our big gap is on technology adoption, compiling best practices. So what is in both through our NEPAD and also through our, Dr. Sanait is also here, through the World Bank, how can you address this technology gap? Thank you.
Okay, all right. Let me allow the speakers to respond to these three questions. We will do one round after this, and then we have our panelists. So, yeah, who would like to start? Is livestock lost in CAADP? That was one question. The other is the Africa Climate Change Agribusiness Plan, raising $5 billion. Where is it vis-a-vis FSCAP? And then the last one on technology adoption. So who is starting? Emmanuel, Tim? Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mark. Just to pick up on some of the questions, maybe the livestock one, maybe I start with that. No, I don't think livestock your grazing systems, the landscapes, and the rangelands, that are a big part of what you need to deal with. You know, there is also interventions that are aligned with genetic resources, particularly, you know, for livestock as well, utilization of indigenous livestock breeds as part of resilience building. I think that's quite clearly outlined in CAADP Kampala. So I could go on with respect to giving examples there, but I guess the message is that, you know, there's been quite exhaustive you know, look at what could be done for the livestock sector, because as you mentioned, it is a significant sector. Yeah, maybe the last one I could comment on is on the early warning systems. Yeah, I agree. There's still some work to be done. The good thing is it's been shown to work and to make a big difference in many parts of our continents already. You know, and I agree with you that, you know, technology elements would be a big part of how we solve this and how we actually, you know, drive this. The technology is there, and we need to look at how do we integrate it within the systems that, you know, our countries are utilizing, and how do we actually upgrade those, because we have also heard of instances where disasters, you know, have not been quite averted despite, you know, some of the early warning systems that clearly need, you know, improvement. You know, so there is work to be done, but there is also a lot of potential to unleash, you know, these tools on the challenges that we face. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Manuel.
Sorry, I'm an old man. So on the issues, livestock is clearly very, very important, and I think the FSCAP process won't ignore livestock at all. I think it's certainly part of the analysis, so I'm not anticipating it will be. I think that one of the challenges in looking at investments is the degree to which sectors are ready for investments, and there's obviously a political commitment that is required. So you need to factor that into but it's certainly part of the equation. I wasn't sure whether it was early warning system or the adoption of early warning system and technology, but you know, there's no doubt that dollars invested in making early warning systems work save millions of dollars, right? That's proven analysis. So I think in terms of, again, looking at and making the case for investment in early warning systems and making them work and making them respond to the risks and making the decision makers respond to the risks, that is a good investment opportunity, I think. So I would be very surprised if that doesn't come through. And the third question was? Yes. What lessons have we learned? So I think that the lessons have been learnt from previous. I can leave behind the global paper, which from which the FSCAP came from. I think the way that FSCAP is approaching is probably right in the sense that looking at what's happening within countries, looking at where investments, looking at the policy environment, looking at the capacity, looking at the political economy priorities. That to me, making it work from the ground up, that seems to me to be drawing in the lessons from what has worked from more global funds, but embedding it more into national processes, which feels like the right approach. But I can share the approach paper that covers that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tim and Manuel. I did say I was going to come back to you for a second round of questions. It was a bit of a race for me to open it up for questions and comments at this point. Okay, so let me take one comment from director here. Then we will move to the panel session. You will have opportunities to ask your questions.
Thank you, but I feel bad to take it from Odd, whose hand was up before me, so I will share my moment with Odd. If you take one, I thought I saw your hand up, so I will share my time.
It's not fair because my brother here was also having his hand up. No, okay, if I'm fast, I'll pass it over to you and he won't notice. So my name is Odd Arnesen. I'm a regional envoy for food security from Norway. I have a question to AUC and Audan EPAD. I participated in the Africa Climate Summit in Addis recently. Agriculture was not there. So when we're talking about international climate financing, and when Africa says we need support to climate mitigation, but also we are part of the adaptation, but we're also a part of the mitigation solution. But we don't see agriculture there. And we know that AMSEN is dominated or owned by the Ministers of Environment. I'm living in Tanzania, and when you look at the position from Tanzania for the COP, agriculture and food security is not there. So if you want international climate financing from the African side, we have to see those demands coming in those international conferences, or it's not there.
Okay, thank you. I think now we can come to you. No agriculture at Africa Climate.
I think I made a mistake to give him the mic. Well, thank you. I mean, you're probably right that there's no explicit a reference to agriculture in the declaration that came out from Addis, but I think there was a lot of events and a lot of awareness that was raised during Addis, during the climate summit on agriculture and the link between agriculture and climate. In fact, we did have a side event on the FSCAP during the African Climate Summit 2 in Addis. I do think that the level of awareness of this relationship has significantly been raised since the the climate conference that was held in Dubai and the declarations that came out of there. So we've made significant progress in positioning agriculture within the climate discussion. And I don't think anybody can refute the importance of having that conversation between climate and agriculture and making that linkage at different levels, national level, regional level, and continental level, global levels. At the COP level, we are seeing that. Regional level, there's the African climate strategy. And at AUD and NEPAD, we are actually working at the integrity principles of the carbon markets. And Tim mentioned the green financing. One of the key areas that we are looking at in terms of attracting carbon finance is in the agriculture sector or food system sector. So there's work happening. And we do have now a significant opportunity doing the NIBes to make sure that we continue to push on that integration. Yeah, I like the point Ayala made on climate and agriculture, because sometimes in the countries, we have two conversations where we are looking at the NDCs and we are looking at the NIBes. But we really have to bring this, and this is the work we are also focusing on, policy coherence, that we look at this and implement, build synergies in the implementation of this. And therefore, I really, on the tools, on the FSCAP tools, I think it's timely. The guidelines that we have just developed and adopted by our ministers identify the need to have tools to support member states in this analysis. And I think FSCAP is actually and should be one of the tools that we have in the menu. But for that, we need to have more events, more awareness of the tools, more training of how to use the tools. So maybe if we can agree, really as one of the outcomes here, that FSCAP is one of the tools that will be in the menu for the analytical work that we have to do in the countries for the NIBes development. And for that, we need to also make sure that we get many more member states, knowledgeable about the tools and how to use the tools. So more capacity training on using these tools to conduct the analytical work, particularly as it relates to identifying the different funding through your analysis, public expenditure, private sector needs, as well as windows and opportunities for attracting funds from the green climate window that are available out there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, I will come to you. But for now, allow me to invite our panelists who will also share similar perspectives on the next steps, also on activities which are planned and how they intend to support this whole conversation on climate smart agriculture. So let me invite our panelists here. First one is Bartholomew Shataika, Special Program Coordinator, Soil and Health Hub, CADESA. Is he here? Yes, please take your seat here. Let us welcome him as he takes his seat. The next is Portia Polo from Trace and Save, South Africa. Portia. Then we have Teklu Ekosa, Program Manager, GIZ Ethiopia. Then we have Senate Regasa, Program Manager, Food Systems Resilience Program, IGAD. And last but not the least, Pauline Chivenge, International Rice Research Institute. Okay. Thank you very much. So, colleagues, we're going to be very brief.
I'm coordinating Soil Health and Fertilizer Hub. As CADES, I think we have already started a lot of interventions. We have tools. We also have planned activities that to help to domesticate the CAADP Kampala Declaration. I would categorize CADESA's interventions in 5 areas. We are a member state mandated organization to coordinate agricultural research and development, including CSA. And we have implemented a lot of programs, the Global Climate Change Alliance Plus program. We have coordinated with the other regional partners on ICRA, Food Systems Resilience Program, FSRP, and so forth and so on. But summing it up, what we have as a potential areas to scale up CSA, based on what we have done previously, we have seen technologies that are partners. It has got key issues of knowledge management, research and data innovations, the issues of agroecological rezoning. We have already engaged the member states. We have the data. We noted that they're using outdated information on agroecologies, which is linked to soil health mapping. And this has been key in the on our discussion in the past 2 days. We cannot talk of soil health without knowing our soil. So as CADES, we have already started the interventions. We are doing the digital innovations. We have partnered with some US institutions on scientific animation without borders. If you go to our platform, our online platform, you will see a lot of technologies being displayed on scientific animation. We are developing an e-catalog to document all the CSA technologies for the partners to use. And again, capacity building, we have demonstrated the impact of drip irrigation systems in 5 or 7 member states. What we want is now to go to scale. It's one of the key issues that we think will help us to address the productivity, to address the issues of reducing, having the post-harvest loss, which are key pillars in the CAADP. We have also established regional centers of leadership through our flagship programs, the Agricultural Productivity Program for Southern Africa. We established regional centers of leadership that will anchor the technologies. For example, I think Zambia is leading in legume-based systems. Malawi is leading in maize-based systems. Mozambique is in rice-based systems. Recently, we assisted Angola in cassava-based systems and Lesotho in horticultural-based systems. So these are centers that to actually assist the other member states, like learning centers. Beyond that, we did a study to identify the priority commodities for the 16 member states. So we have all that information. That what we need is now
a number of countries to scale. You have mentioned the need for data and data systems, also integrating them into broader policy and institutional frameworks. And you have highlighted some key issues such as the setup of regional investment funds, fertilizer innovation platforms, and regional data monitoring systems. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. Now I would like to move to Portia for you also to share with us what your planned activities are, what are the specific tools, and again, the question of how we scale up, please.
Okay, thank you. My name is Portia. I work for a company based in South Africa called Trace and Save. I'm a sustainable agriculture researcher with them. And my perspective will come from the commercial dairy sector side, as my experience is mostly there. So what we basically do, we work with over 80 commercial dairy farmers in South Africa, and we help them implement sustainable practices there's already implementation in South Africa for climate smart interventions. And we've built, sorry, I'm a bit nervous. So,
take your time.
So we've got a system that we're using that's called the SWAN system, which is soil, water, atmosphere, and nutrients. So the farmers, they take soil samples on an annual basis to measure their soil health. They also provide data on their irrigation systems, on how much they're irrigating on their pastures. This helps us to be able to measure their water use efficiency and the water footprint of the farm. And we also look at the carbon footprint of the farm in terms of emissions that they are bringing in terms of the inputs that are used to produce milk. And that helps us to be able to identify key areas where they can reduce the emissions, especially with the dairy sector being seen as the poster child for greenhouse gas emissions via the methane. And then we also look at the nutrients that they are bringing into their systems in terms of fertilizers, in terms of feed, to see the efficiency of these nutrients, whether they are being converted to milk, whether they are being converted to pasture. So this has helped us to be able to identify key areas of intervention in order to get the farmers to comply with sustainable practices. And what has helped us really is that the milk buyers themselves, they are actually incentivizing farmers who adopt these sustainable practices. And I think what has really made the dairy industry particularly to be ahead is because they are measuring, and they've been measuring, they're keeping a database, and they've been measuring their carbon footprints, their water use efficiency for many, many years. As a result, they've been able to enter the carbon market. They've managed, there are some farmers earlier this year that were able to sell carbon credits, some getting up to $80,000 US from the credits that they've accumulated over a period of 5 years. So I think that the most important thing is keeping database, because that's where you start. If you don't have data, you cannot measure and you cannot see your progress. And with that database, they've actually been able to see that there's areas where they can reduce their input cost, but still maintaining production. So I think that the starting point of all of these interventions, we need to have data that we can be able to monitor to see whether and track changes, and also use that as evidence to rally other farmers to see that when you are implementing climate smart interventions, you can actually benefit financially. And when we started working with these farmers, their main aim was to actually help reduce their input cost, not necessarily wanting to get any benefit from that. They wanted to reduce and improve their profits, but now they can see that there's actually incentives that are put in place for them to get benefits. So their benefit for them is twofold. It's saving the money from reducing input cost, and then getting benefit now from being able to sell carbon credits into the market. So that's my contribution.
Thank you very much, Portia, for that. I'm sure the colleague from ILRI who was asking about whether livestock is lost in CAADP will be happy to hear that there are, in fact, some climate smart interventions which are focusing on the dairy sector and yielding good results. And I also like the point you made about data and data systems, which reinforces Bartholomew's point earlier. So you are saying you need to have the evidence, and based on that evidence, you can rally more farmers to come on board and therefore scale up. Thank you very much for that intervention. And now let me move to Teklu from GIZ Ethiopia. Please.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Teklu Kosa. I work for GIZ, managing a project focusing on soil health, and it's a country program. As you might know, we have a problem, I think is common for most African countries, that land degradation in the form of soil erosion, organic matter depletion, and in most Africans also in the form of acidity, soil acidity. So, you know, soil and water conservation practices have been underway for many, many years in the form of stopping the degradation, erosion, and through these SLM projects. And about maybe 20 million hectares of land has been under conservation practices, including the physical and biological measures. But that will not be interesting for the farmers unless that is supported by economic benefits. And so additional intervention was the introduction of integrated soil fertility management and climate smart agriculture, where the objective was to increase productivity while also improving the soil health, improving the resilience of the system, and also what I would say mitigation through adaptation. But that, you know, the ISFM principle is to integrate mineral fertilizer, a balanced mineral fertilizer use, and also organic input, together with good agronomic management practices. And this should be site-specific, because everything fits everywhere. That is not going to be efficient. So for that, we need to generate evidence to make site-specific. And we have a lot of data, legacy data that was collected over 60 years. And we, with coordination with the Ministry of Agriculture and EIR, Ethiopian Institute of Agricultural Research, we managed to mobilize legacy data in thousands, both on characterization of the soil and also the agronomic response to management options. And that data has been used to develop site-specific management practices. In fact, we have initially produced the National Soil Resource Map, a digital one with a good resolution, 250 meters. And using this and other remote sensing data, we managed to develop a site-specific soil health and fertilizer management decision tool. And this tool has been disseminated to, in fact, validated and now under piloting with thousands of farmers. And it has shown significant increase in yield and economic benefits. And also, together with this, we know because of this, we have a very rich database for the resource, but we don't have sufficient information about the farmer's input. So a system has been built so that farmers also provide feedback, not only on the advisories and the input they're getting, but also on their own specific reaction toward this, how the dissemination itself is made, because this dissemination is mainly digital, sometimes with some intermediaries from the extension. So this data is collected and integrated into the National Agricultural Data Portal, and that would also trigger the next level of intervention based on the specific question that is coming from the farmers.
Right.
So this is what we have now. What is in the pipeline is we have managed now, we are almost about toward this end of adopting the African fertilizer and soil health roadmap. And that roadmap would be implemented as of the next year. But the roadmap also, the implementation should be monitored. And for that, we are building a soil health dashboard, which would serve as both a planning tool and also a monitoring tool, because we have already the data. A baseline has to be established based on the current data we have. And we also plan to model scenarios and show to the policy which pathways to follow as the implementation goes on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Teklu, for sharing those experiences relating specifically to soil health. And I think your submission also reinforces the two previous speakers, the points they made. You talk, for example, about the need for the adoption of those specific technologies to have economic benefits for those who adopt it. I think Portia also made the same point. And then you also mentioned the need to generate the evidence that helps you, in fact, to develop, for example, site-specific management practices, which will also go a long way to scale up the interventions that you are carrying out. I picked another thing you said. You talked about systems for example, farmer feedback. So that also goes into the evidence generation. So I am looking at these interventions, these technologies should be based on systems in order to make them sustainable and also to make them scalable for you to reach scale. And what you say about the way forward, for example, on the soil health dashboard is very interesting. So colleagues, you see that there are very many interesting interventions related to CSA which are ongoing. And as the conversation progresses, we see how they can be brought to scale. Now, let me move to our next panelist. When the name is, just a minute. Yes, our next panelist is Senait Regasa. I hope I'm pronouncing the first name very well. You are from IGAD. Please let us hear what IGAD is doing with respect to climate smart agriculture.
Okay, thank you. Let me start by saying what IGAD stands for. It stands for the Intergovernmental Authority on Development. It's one of the regional economic community of the African Union. Its mission is mainly to promote regional cooperation among member states in Eastern and Horn of Africa in various areas, including agriculture and environment. As you well know, the area is highly vulnerable to climatic shocks, weather-related hazards, so climate smart agriculture is not an option, it's a necessity to do. Talking about the pathways, I think I should start with the mandate given by the CAADP Kampala declaration to the regional economic communities. One of the tasks given to us is to work with parliamentarians in the region. In that regard, we have formed an IGAD Parliamentarian Forum for Agri-Food Systems Transformation. We brought together CAADP focal persons, experts from the region, along with standing committees of agriculture in the parliaments of the member states. And it was very interesting for us to see that for the parliamentarians, CAADP was something new, and that they were not familiar with. They were very excited and have committed themselves to work with the respective CAADP experts in their countries to promote the agenda. That's one of the things we did. And the second one, the mandate given to us is to domesticate the declaration by developing regional agri-food systems investment plan. We have now developed a regional agri-food systems investment plan. It is in a draft form. This plan was developed by member states experts themselves, so it's fully owned by the member states. Now coming specifically to climate smart agriculture, one of my colleagues had earlier mentioned about IGAD's capacity for climate prediction. We have a center called IGAD Climate Prediction and Application Center, very strong in terms of providing climate services, which is really important for climate smart agriculture. You need to know how the weather is going to look like in order to come up with a decision in agricultural management. So with that center, we have worked with member state experts and experts from other organizations such as CGIAR to form a digital agro-climate advisory services knowledge network in the region. That's one of the intervention areas. And also based on our mandate, our convening power, we are playing a role in the scaling up aspect of CACA by creating the platform for knowledge sharing. The network I mentioned is one of them, and we are also working to develop a platform for an online platform for Daca's digital agro-climate advisory services. And we are also working to organize a learning event with World Bank, CARDESA, and also the African Union, specifically on the food systems climate action plan tool that was earlier presented by Tim Robertson from the World Bank. Let me stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senate, for giving us the climate smart agriculture interventions from a regional economic community perspective. Some of the things you touched on, for example, the formation of the Parliamentary Forum to get the right political and institutional backing at that level is very important, especially as you say that for climate smart agriculture in IGAD is not an option, but a necessity due to the nature of the region. So you specifically also mentioned the IGAD climate prediction. So this is very, very important. And so if this is done at sub-regional level, then this is something that benefits the member states of the sub-region. And so when we are talking about scale, these are some of the interventions that help to scale up the appropriate CSA interventions. And last but not the least, the issue around platforms for knowledge sharing is also important, because all the things which are being done, what we have heard from the other colleagues, others need to know about it. If we want to promote adoption, they need to know what is working where, how it can be contextualized, and then scaled up. So thank you very much for sharing those perspectives with us. And now let me go to our last but not the least panelist. That is Pauline Shivenge, who is from the International Rice Research Institute, and here what the International Rice Research Institute has been doing in relation to climate smart agriculture.
All right, thank you for that. By the name of my organization, I'm going to talk about rice, a crop that is increasingly becoming important on the continent because we are consuming more of rice as a continent. And so we are also increasing production in Africa. And many countries, they have developed national rice development strategies to increase rice production so that we reduce imports from Asia. So to begin with, productivity of rice on the continent is low, much lower than other regions. When the global average is about 5 tons per hectare, in Africa, our average is about 3 tons per hectare. So we really need to increase productivity. And we have countries that have increased production of rice. For example, Tanzania, where I am based, has attained rice self-sufficiency, but most of this has been through land expansion, which has challenges on clearing land for cultivation of rice, and that has implications on lack of biodiversity and greenhouse gas emissions. So in Erie, we focus on integrated or holistic solutions to try and address the challenges that affect rice production. And by the nature of these integrated solutions, they offer climate smart agriculture options. So we have a breeding arm where we breed rice varieties that are adapted to the extremes of weather. So they adapt to different climate scenarios. They increase, we are focusing on increasing productivity. So we breed varieties that are high yielding, that are resistant to the diseases, but also that adapted to extremes of weather such as droughts and climates, and also to salinity, which is a common problem in rice production. We also have other management practices that aim to increase productivity and reduce emissions. So you may know that rice is one of the sectors that contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. I think overall, when we look at agriculture, rice contributes about 11% of the greenhouse gases. So reducing or mitigating the emissions is really key for us to attain climate smart agriculture. We have developed interventions such as AWD, which is alternate wetting and drying, which reduces water use, or we are also focusing on removing from continuous flooding to direct seeded rice. So both alternate wetting and drying and direct seeded rice reduce the amount of water used without yield penalties, or we can actually increase the yields. And then we reduce the amount of water that is used. And this has been shown to significantly reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. So it touches on the corners, on the pillars of climate smart agriculture. We have also had a preliminary work that shows that there are other core benefits, such as health benefits. We know that rice, continuous flooded rice, influences the breeding of mosquitoes. So these practices that I mentioned, alternate wetting and drying and direct seeded rice, contribute to reducing the breeding of mosquitoes and hence contribute to reducing malaria, which is a big problem for the African continent. We also have other technologies such as site-specific nutrient management, because when we apply fertilizers, we need to ensure we enhance nutrient use efficiency. And site-specific nutrient management has been shown to do that. And for this, we have also developed digital advisory tools that can give this agronomy advisory that is tailored to farmers in different fields, because we know that we have a poor extension system, and with digital advisories, it helps to deliver some of these advisories at scale. And some of these technologies are also knowledge intensive, so putting them into digital tools and helps the extension workers to deliver these advisories more easily. Lastly, I will talk about other technologies or interventions that we do. We talked about diversification earlier. So in rice, we can diversify with fish, which you can grow in the same field. And this has been shown to enhance productivity reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but also improve the resilience of the farming systems. And again, similar to alternate wetting and drying, we have shown that there are some health benefits where we reduce the breeding of malaria. So we are scaling some of these technologies here in Africa. We focus mostly on East Africa for IRI, and we are doing this in Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, and Mozambique. I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Pauline, for that very interesting experience you have shared. Also from from the research angle. So here we heard you talk about interventions that are related to adaptation and also interventions that focus on mitigation. So that is very key. You mentioned some site-specific nutrient management. I think that also goes with what Teklu was saying about some site-specific interventions that are also rolled out under the program he described. And you talked about digital advisory tools, which is also similar to what the colleague from IGAD also mentioned. So we see that some common approaches are coming through, and the issues that you raise, which also help you to scale up, are also critical. And I've also heard other panelists.
Moderator, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Larry Umuna. I work for the Coalition of Implementers for Fertilizers and Soil Health. Maniewu, in his very brilliant presentation, spoke about strategic objective 1, which focuses on agri-production, industrialization, and trade. It was also nice to listen to the panel talking about scaling up digital technologies. I think it's important for us to note that in implementing CSA principles during CAADP implementation, or even scaling up or commercializing these digital technologies would require strong active participation of the private sector. And if we agree that CAADP Kampala will be intentional about delivery, that is not just about frameworks and action plans, perhaps one of the things that we would like to see is to see the private sector having a seat on the table there. I know my sister Portia comes from private sector, but my understanding is that she was focusing more on the ESG principles. But how do we begin to also think about the private sector playing a more important role in the commercialization, in addition, of course, to the public sector extension services that will be used? And I think that is pretty silent from the brilliant presentations I heard from the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So private sector having a seat at the table. Right, let's go to the left side here.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Ronald Zoguraza, CAADP focal point with Zimbabwe, Ministry of Agriculture. I want to appreciate the presentations, and specifically from the first speaker. You highlighted the Pfumvudza concept. It is well enriched the farmers for Zimbabwe, but my question or my comment is on the early warning systems. Maybe you can just in brief shed more light in terms of how we would strengthen these early warning systems, because they really are a pillar in accelerating CSA in the face of this climate change. That's my comment and reaction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's take the last one from Prof. Ayalne.
Well, thank you, moderator. Again, my name is Ayalne Bokala, Senior Policy Advisor at African Union and Commission within African agricultural policy dialogue. Well, it's good for me to see the progress that various institutions are actually capturing CSA through years because of my involvement in CSA for a number of years. And actually people speaking about scaling up of this as the approach. It's very nice to hear from all of you a number of approaches. But in scaling up this approach, I think we cannot afford to be silent about its gender implication and the involvement of youth. Because transformation and change in approach actually requires these categories of people to get well involved. Then my question is, we have heard a lot of interventions. Do you have something tailored to youth or to women in your basket? That's my question, because they are very important in scaling up climate smart agriculture. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof, for that. So I'm coming back to you, our panelists, and we'll be very brief. You have a couple of seconds, 30 seconds, I suppose. The first intervention was talking about the importance of having the private sector at the center of these interventions as we seek to scale up and also to sustain the impact of those interventions. Then the second colleague talked about early warning systems. He wanted to hear a bit more about that. And then Prof is saying that as we scale up these interventions, it's important to also specifically look at the needs for women and youth, have a gender lens to some of these interventions and scaling up strategies. And so the question is, do you have tailored interventions to address these specific stakeholders? Let me start from the end and come this way. Please straight to the point, half a minute, and then we move. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, the private sector is very important. As ERI and I think the CG in general, we try to work with both the public and the private sector. I'll be honest, it's not very easy to work with the private sector, particularly for research, because we are researching interventions. At that point, there's little benefit for the private sector. So their involvement is still quite limited, except in scenarios like the seed systems, where you have the seed companies being involved. And then early warning, we do use climate information to develop our advisories. So we use it as a service for our interventions. And then when it comes to youth and gender, it's really core to ERI. All our research is anchored in youth and women. And we have gender specialists who are working in different programs. We even have gender and social scientists who are based here in our African offices. We look into the perceptions of the farmers, what varieties are preferred for the women, for cooking, and for men, maybe for milling purposes. So we do look at different aspects. I just didn't bring that here when we were talking about climate smart agriculture, but it is very important.
Thank you.
Okay, on the private sector participation, especially in the case of digital agriculture, their role is really key, and we can already see that there are a number of small businesses emerging in countries like Kenya, Ethiopia, engaged in the agricultural sector by providing advisory services. What we need to do, as we said, is to bring them to the table and also discuss with them how can we make the policy environment in the context more accommodative of the private sector needs. That's very crucial. On strengthening early warning system, I can say in our region, we are okay in the aspects of providing early warning information. The missing link is the early action part. We need to be better on that aspect. We need to package our early warning information in a way that can be used by decision makers and farmers and also at all levels. Okay, maybe the last one.
The last one, yes.
Yes, gender and youth. When we talk about digital agriculture, the gender divide in the digital areas is very clear, and how many of these women have smartphones, how many of them are literate to use those applications or softwares to get advisory services. This is really important, and in our project we are trying to look at the profile of women in agri-food systems transformation and see how we can improve their participation. The use and digital agriculture, I think we consider the use as opportunities, potential for promoting it. Thank you.
All right, please proceed, yes.
Yeah, thank you. So regarding the private sector, I was talking about the digital site-specific soil health advisory. And this advisory was under piloting, involving also the private sector. As you know, private sector, maybe in many of our countries, are not well developed, but there are some vibrant startups, including for Ethiopia, for example, the one private sector called Lersha. And the policy dimension to that is the government now is adopting pluralistic extension system, which also promote the involvement of the private sector. In terms of the scaling up, which involves, targeting the gender. This tool, again, I remain with this digital tool, is responsive to the needs of each individual. We call it hyper-localized. So it would be interactive. So individuals could be the old, the young, the women, the poor, the rich. They would, the system asks their condition, and so tailors the recommendation to the need of the farmers. I think, I don't know what.
That is fine. That's
okay.
Very fine. Thank you very much. And Portia, you may choose to focus on the gender and youth dimension if you wish.
Actually, okay. Actually, in terms of the private sector, in the dairy industry, it's very important for them to actually adopt climate smart interventions because it affects their bottom line. So, and it also shapes the mind of the consumer, especially the dairy industry being, there's lots of controversies there. So if they can actually prove to the consumer that we are doing everything we can to implement sustainable practices that do not harm the environment and we are trying to regenerate the soils that have been depleted, then it also influences their market, the market and the consumer who's going to buy. So for them, it's embedded within the financial strategy of the company. So the private sector is much ahead in South Africa than even government in that regard. And then in terms of early warning systems, so our farmers, they take soil samples on an annual basis. They take water quality samples on an annual basis, which informs on the depletions or the necessary interventions that need to be done in terms of fertilizer, and also informs them to know what impact are they having on the water sources, because they also depend on the very same water. So they are able then to be able to see early on where they need to actually come up with strategies to reduce some of the inputs that they are bringing into the system that influence our water sources. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. And Bartholomew,
Thank you.
The last one.
Yeah, thank you, moderator. On the private sector, CADESA, I should emphasize, we are the coordinators. We coordinate research and development. So what we have done in all our activities, we ensure that we involve the private sector. I'll give an example on digital technologies. We have deliberately signed an MOU with an institution that is specialized in scaling up digital technology, so that when we have the technology as an institution, they should be able to uptake it. And we are open to more institutions coming in. On e-learning systems, again, we have training packages to ensure that we capacitate the member states to be able to respond to disasters. We partnered with ICPAC and ICRA to deliver the training. So that's part of the strategy that we do to ensure that we respond to early warning systems. In terms of gender, we have a specific pillar in our strategy that talks of gender. And not only gender, also the youth. So what we do also have specific packages, trainings. Recently we had trainings targeting the youth. We have technologies, labor-saving technologies, targeting women and youth. So we try, we may not be up to, but we have a deliberate strategy to target women and youth, and also the disadvantaged. So we have categorized the technologies that have been generated through our coordination to respond to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, colleagues, for those very, very rich perspectives that you have shared. Let me try to say very briefly some of the key things that I captured from the discussions. So number one is that we have to strengthen the agriculture climate nexus in these discussions on climate smart agriculture, technologies and interventions as we seek to scale. So that those linkages need to be strengthened. We shouldn't forget that. We also heard about the FSCAP, and as director indicated, it's a very important tool. So there's a need for the tool to be disseminated, and also I think for capacity to be built to enable our countries and other stakeholders at country level to adopt the approach for CSA. We have heard about the importance of looking at the gender and youth dimensions of these CSA technologies, tools, and approaches. All of you have attested to that. And again, also for sustainability and for impact, the key role of the private sector has also been emphasized. Overall, you have shared various technologies which are making impact at different levels in different locations. It will be important to collect these experiences, generate the knowledge, disseminate the knowledge, and facilitate adoption of these different interventions on CSA. Thank you very much, colleagues, and let us appreciate our panelists for this rich discussion as you take your seats. And you have earned yourself lunch. I'm told that we can go straight to lunch from here, which has delayed a little bit. Thank you very much for your participation.